Hi everyone, welcome to Zibakeriz, where I show you how to create beautiful decorated cakes and cupcakes. Now I'm going to show you how to make this beautiful floral decorated cake. So over here I have a cake that's been crumb coated, and I'm going to add my second layer of cream, which is this beautiful mauve shade that I've created with both equal parts of red and blue. So I actually like to use this tapered spatula and start from the bottom and kind of apply that buttercream all the way to the top. You want to add a very thin layer because the cake at the bottom is actually nice and firm, so you don't need too much, just a thin layer to cover the top layer of your cream. Then I like to take a bench scraper and smooth off the sides of the cake after the entire cake was covered with the cream. So you just want to turn your turntable while holding your bench scraper nice and straight. You will see some sort of air pockets. Just go back and fill those in with some buttercream, and then again scrape off the sides of the buttercream. And then I actually like to give a nice final scrape to smooth off the cake, giving a nice smooth finish. So then I actually place the cake into the fridge for 10 to 15 minutes so you can see it is nice and firm. So now taking a hot knife, I'm actually just going to take off the excess hanging buttercream. So you just want to do this nice and carefully, and then take the excess buttercream and place that into the bowl. So you want to make sure that your knife is nice and hot. This will actually make it a lot easier to actually get those nice sharp edges, and you just have to do this carefully so you don't actually end up breaking the side of the buttercream as well. And then carefully take off that buttercream that is hanging over the edge. Then you want to put a little bit of buttercream on the top and kind of give that nice smooth finish on the top of your cake. Then with that same tapered spatula, just smooth it out, and you will see some of that buttercream hanging over the edge. So you want to hold that tapered spatula at a 90-degree angle and clean off the sides and pull in the remaining buttercream. So over here I have some clear coconut extract as well as this wedding gold luster dust by the Sugar Art. It's a nice bright gold color, and I'm actually going to be creating a mixture with the coconut extract and this gold luster dust to create a splatter effect on the cake. So I've added a little bit of that gold luster dust, and I'm going to be adding in some of that clear coconut extract. You want to just, using a paintbrush, mix that together. You want to create somewhat of a medium consistency for this splatter effect. It doesn't have to be super thick, just a nice medium consistency. So you can see I've created the mixture. Now from far away you kind of want to create a splatter on top of this cake. You can practice it on a paper to get the consistency. So I actually splattered it on the cake from far away so I get a nice effect. You can also use different brushes to get different types of effects. So I'm actually using the biggest brush, and I'm actually creating different angles to create different of that gold luster splatter from different effects. So kind of getting those long horizontal lines as well as those vertical lines. So you just want to hold your paintbrush from far away and just kind of flicker the paintbrush to get different types of designs of this splatter effect on your cake. Once you're happy with the splatter on your cake, the cake is actually ready and complete for the next stage. So at this point I'm actually placing the cake into the fridge for about 10 to 15 minutes just so it can set a little bit. In that much, I'm actually going to be creating my buttercream flower. So all of these buttercream shades that you see were actually made by all 6 of these shades. So this super red Chef Master gel food coloring, this nice dark deep blue, this sky blue shade, as well as this leaf green, this bright white gel food coloring by Wilton, as well as this Buckeye brown by Chef Master. To create this light mauve shade, I've used equal parts red and blue. To get this darker color, I just use a concentrated amount of red and blue. For the white buttercream, I use Wilton's white gel food coloring. For this blue shade, I use sky blue with a little bit of red. Green made with some leaf green and brown gel food coloring. The light green made with some more of that white and a little bit of green. This medium green made with a little bit more of green, and this brown made with some of that brown gel food coloring. So all of these buttercream shades were made with these 6 gel food coloring. So now for the piping tips, you're going to need a Wilton tip number 104, which is a rose petal tip, and a slightly smaller rose petal, which is a 102. As well as this Wilton tip number 81, as well as this leaf tip, which is a tip number 67. And you also want to use a couple of round tips. Over here I have a Wilton tip number 3, which is an open round tip, as well as a slightly smaller one, which is an open round tip number 2 by Wilton. So also you want to use a coupler, and I actually added these base for all of these piping tips if you see at the bottom, so that I can actually change any of these tips that I want to different shades. So you want to make sure you have that, as well as this little wooden block to actually hold our flower nail on top. So you're also going to need a flower nail, as well as these floral scissors to help lift your flowers off of the flower nail. So I'm actually going to start off with this medium mauve shade, and I've actually added a little bit of that dark shade inside, and I feel like that just adds a nice realistic effect to our buttercream flowers. So I'm actually going to start off by adding a little bit of that buttercream directly onto the flower nail. And what this is going to actually do is it's going to create height for our flower. And now I'm actually going to be adding the Wilton tip number 104 to the piping bag. Just want to twist that on, and now what I'm going to do is create a spiral in the center. I want to make sure that the thin side of the piping tip is actually facing upwards and the thick side is at the bottom. So you want to create a little bit of a spiral in the center, and now what you want to do is you want to create rose petals around it. So I'm sorry, it did actually get cut off here, and I actually didn't realize, so it will actually get back into the focus to the center of the camera. But you can see I'm actually holding my piping tip a little bit towards the inside, kind of like a closed rose. So you can see I have some of that buttercream actually on my piping tip, so you want to clean that off and continue with your rose petals, otherwise that will affect the next rose petals you create. So I'm actually creating somewhat of a wiggle effect while I am actually piping on this side. I'm actually not being super perfect with this. I feel like that actually creates a little bit more of a realistic effect to the flower. So you just want to create this design so it kind of looks like a closed rose. So you just want to add petals here and there, and once you're happy with the amount of petals that you've added on your rose, what you want to do is you want to take your this green shade that I created which was with the leaf green and the brown buttercream. I'm going to be adding the Wilton tip number 102 on this, and I'm actually going to be creating these leaves. So you just want to add a little bit on the side, holding with the thin side up and kind of just lifting up and down, and you want to just add enough so that it actually enhances the rose effect. And then taking some floral scissors, you want to carefully lift the flower up and place it onto a cake board. And then you want to set that aside. Now working on that same, another rose using the same flower nail, I'm creating a mount in the center. Again, you want to create a spiral in the center, and then what you want to do is you want to overlap all your previous petals. So you kind of want to hold the previous petal, and then you don't have to be perfect, and I'm sorry again, the first few roses I didn't realize I was actually recording a little bit towards the inside, so it got cut off. But what you want to do is you want to just keep layering your rose petals. You don't have to overthink the process, you just want to add enough, and then using the leaf green again create these up and down motion and add a few leaves here and there, and that's just going to enhance the rose. So again, now I'm actually going to be taking that darker mauve shade, and I'm actually going to be creating a flower with this shade using the same Wilton tip number 104 that I was using before, and I'm just twisting that onto this piping bag. So again, you want to follow the same method of creating this back and forth diamond mount in the center of the flower nail, then create a spiral in the center, and then what you want to do is start creating petals. So you want to go up and then pull down, pull up and then pull down. You want to create about 3 petals in the center, and then you want to overlap those petals with about 5 petals in the next row. So you want to do this nice and carefully, and you can also create this wiggle effect, and I feel like it just creates a more realistic effect on your rose. So just go up and down while kind of wiggling, and then you can start to open the roses on the side, and that's just going to make it look a lot more realistic. So now again, to create the leaves using the Wilton 102, I'm going to be creating this up and down motion, creating a couple more leaves on one side compared to the other. So for the next couple of roses, I'm actually going to be creating a few of the smaller sized ones, just so I have a lot more dimension on my cake. So again, create a mount and then create the spiral, and then you want to create leaves. So I actually like to follow the rule of 3, 5, 7 petals, but for these roses, I'm actually kind of adding as many as I want, just to create this unevenness and create this wiggled effect, just to kind of make it look a lot more realistic. And then using the leaf tip again, create a couple of those leaves starting from the bottom, creating this upward motion and then pulling down. So now I'm taking that light mauve shade that I created and using the same Wilton 104 tip that I was using on the previous petal. I'm going to add that same spiral motion and then create this petal by creating this overlap on the previous petal, and just keep following that same method and create a little bit of a wiggle while you're creating this flower to create a little bit more of a realistic look. And then add a couple of leaves on the side. So you can add a little bit with the up and down effect and then add some on the side. Then using your flower nail, you just want to place it onto the cake board. So again, using that same piping tip, create a spiral. Then you want to create petals and overlap the previous petals. And once you create this pull inward effect, you're having closed roses, and as you start to open your petals, it's going to start opening up as your rose as well. So you just add a few of those petals on the side, and once you're happy with the amount of petals you've added to your rose, and using the Wilton tip number 102, create this up and down motion to create the leaves on the side of your cake. And you also can create that side effect to create longer leaves on the side. So again, using the same darker shade of the mauve now, I'm actually creating that same rose in the center, creating the mount, a spiral, then creating those petals again, overlapping the previous petal. And once you're happy with the amount of petals you've added and created how big of a rose you want, then I'm going to take again that same leaf petal and create some of those leaves, kind of pulling up and down and creating a few or as many leaves as you feel that you want on your rose. And then again, place that onto a cake board. So I've created about 8 roses, both large and small. So I'm actually going to place this into the fridge for about 10 to 15 minutes so it can get nice and firm. So in the meantime, while the flowers are getting firm, I have these piping tips. So the different shades of green buttercream are with the Wilton tip number 104 and 102, and the blue and brown is with the Wilton tip number 2 and 3. So I'm actually going to be creating a design kind of in a crescent design. So I'm actually going to be creating some leaves in that same place where I want to place my roses after. So I'm going in this up and down motion, so you can see kind of up and down, and that's creating my leaf design. So you don't want to add too many, just where you feel like you actually want to be placing your roses. And then taking that lighter shade of green buttercream, you're going to be placing those smaller leaves right next to where you created those dark leaves. And you can add a couple more leaves here and there as well. So once you're happy with that, then what I'm going to do is take the Wilton tip number 3 that I have with this blue shade. I'm creating a flower which is kind of created with these small dots, and I'm actually going to go from this large size to kind of like a point, creating a nice beautiful flower. And it's actually creating a nice third color to the top of your cake, and kind of just making it look a lot more realistic and elegant as well. So you just want to add that wherever you feel like you will actually be creating. This will actually get hidden from some of the roses that we are going to be placing on top, but when the color actually does come through over the roses, it actually creates a lot more of a realistic look to the top of your cake as well. So just create that, and then once you're happy with how many you've added, then you want to create this thick mount of buttercream, and that's where our roses are actually going to be placed. They're not only going to add height on top of our cake, but they're also going to allow the buttercream flowers to actually stick. So these buttercream flowers have actually firmed, so you can see I can actually touch them and none of that buttercream gets onto my fingers. So taking that flower scissor, you just want to lift your rose off, and then you want to carefully place that rose wherever you actually find it actually looks nice. So you can actually see that it is firm enough so that you can actually hold it and actually kind of move it around to place it wherever you actually find that it actually looks nice. So you want to do this nice and carefully. Also, if you guys are enjoying this video and you would like to see more types of videos like this, please leave a comment down below that you actually enjoyed this video and what other videos you would like to see. I love hearing your suggestions, and I love trying to create videos that can help you as much as possible. So back to the video, I'm actually using that blue as well as those leaves and kind of just making everything look a lot more cohesive now, since all the roses are on top of the cake. So now I'm actually going in with the Wilton tip number 2, which is a round tip. And I'm actually creating some vines on the side of the cake, and this is just going to make it a little bit more realistic and elegant and add this nice vinery to the cake as well. So you just want to add a little bit of that vine and then kind of create a few of these dots on the side as well. So kind of creating these little buds. And then I'm going to go back in with the leaf petal, so the Wilton tip number 102, following that same motion of kind of going up and pulling down, creating these beautiful little leaves. So now I'm going to be taking the lighter shade, which is also the Wilton 102, creating these little small petals as well. So these little roses, I'm actually creating these leaves right next to the leaves that I've already created, and I'm actually going to be creating them on top of the previous ones while leaving some out, so you don't have to do it to all of them, and kind of just creating a nice crescent design, and then going back in with the bluish shade to create a little bit more of those budded flowers. So now that I'm actually happy with how it looks all around on the top, I'm actually going to be creating and placing one flower at the very bottom, and I'm taking some buttercream that was in my piping bag and carefully placing that on the cake, and now carefully placing my rose on the side as well. So you can see that it actually looks a lot more complete now with the rose at the bottom. And what I'm actually doing is I'm going to create a few rose petals on the cake as well as on my cake board, just to make it look like some of the petals were actually from the flowers or from the rose were falling down. So I'm just kind of placing them a little bit on the side and kind of on the edge of the cake, and then going back in with my leaf petal with the Wilton 102. I'm creating small little leaves as if they were also cascading down on the cake as well as a couple more on the side. Once you're happy with the amount of leaves on the side of your cake and rose petals, this cake is complete. I'm really happy with how it turned out, and if you do try to recreate this cake, please do tag me on my social media, Zibakeriz. Also, if you aren't already subscribed to my channel, please do so and hit that bell notification so you get notified each time I upload a new video. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope to see you guys in my next video.